Go.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Miller, and this paper presentation is on Dracunculiasis, the guinea worm disease eradication without drug or vaccine. So we ask, what is Dracunculiasis? It's a disease caused by a nematode infection in humans, and most commonly is called guinea worm disease. In Latin, it means affliction of little dragons. So what is being done about it? And we'll hit more on these topics later in the presentation. But eradication without a drug or vaccine is proving to be quite difficult, but we are making some headway. And eradication is necessary due to the disease burden. Children that are inflicted miss a lot of school, and then people that are inflicted are unable to go to work. So it causes an economic downturn as well. Where is it now? Primarily it is in Africa. In the 1970s, it could be found in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, rural India, Iran, and Pakistan. So touching a little more, Dracunculiasis is a disease caused by a parasitic nematode infection in humans. Infection occurs when a human ingests the water flea, which is the carrier of the larva of guinea worm disease, and the life cycle of the nematode greatly affects of how it is cured. This photo is compliments of the CDC. If you look in the top right hand corner, we start with the human drinks unfiltered water containing the copiopod, or the water flea, which has the larva of the guinea worm in it. The larvae are released when the copiopods die in the host stomach. They then penetrate the stomach wall, the intraperitoneal space, where they live 12 to 14 months. The male worm actually dies, and the female worm can grow up to 1 meter in length. When it is ready to mature and reproduce, the fertilized female worm will migrate to the surface of the skin, where it burrows through the subcutaneous tissue and causes a blister. When the blister hits water, which usually when people are infected or inflicted with the disease, the blister burns so much that they will usually soak the blister in water, which causes a little bit of relief. But once contact with water, the blister will erupt, the female worm will emerge, the larvae are released into the water, and the cycle continues. The larvae are then consumed by the copiopod is then consumed by the human. There's a couple different ways to eradicate the disease, and part of it is disrupting the life cycle. So primarily drinking filtered water, and then making sure that the blister does not come in contact with water or water sources, so the larva cannot be released again. So just a warning, there are graphic photos ahead. So these are photos of the guinea worm exiting the body. When the guinea worm migrates through the body, it generally exits in the lower regions, so usually in the legs or feet. The guinea worm does not exit all at once. It is up to 1 meter long, and it has to slowly be pulled from the body. Traditionally, it's wrapped around a stick or a matchstick, and can take actually a couple of weeks to exit. If the worm is broken while it is in the skin, it will now decay and rot in your skin, and then also that leads to secondary bacterial infection, as well as the open blister is also prone to secondary bacterial infection. So the World Health Assembly, in the early 1980s, after smallpox was eradicated, this disease came up that it was the best to start to tackle as far as eradication. In 1981, the International Drinking Water Supply and Sanitation Decade began, which was 1981 to 1991, to hopefully supply safe drinking water in order to eradicate the disease. In 1986, the endorsed combined strategy began of the safe water provision, active surveillance, health education, community mobilization, and vector control, as well as personal prophylaxis was put into place. In 1989, they declared a goal of eradication by 1995, which now we know was premature. And many other developmental agencies, organizations, and foundations joined the cause in order to support this eradication. In 1997, it was then involved with political support, as far as the political support of the countries to focus on these health organizations and resources in order to visit the actual villages in the countries to supply them with the education to support eradication. And this was the work of the International Commission for the Certification of Dracunculiasis Eradication, so the ICCDE. And then in 2011, resources for interrupting disease transmission and certification of eradication, surveillance of disease-free areas went into effect. So we actually had some disease-free areas endorsed by the World Health Organization. So what is being done to eradicate? Like I said, no drugs or vaccine is available for this. So once you are treated, or excuse me, once you become infected with the disease has to run its course. The guinea worm has to complete its life cycle for you to be free of it. There's no drug that you can take to kill the worm, unfortunately. And there's also no vaccine to keep you from getting the worm again if you've had it in the past. So we ask, how is it done if there's no drugs or vaccines? There's 5 steps, one of which is surveillance of cases. Health organization workers keep track of the cases in the area that they're assigned. The case is considered contained if the blister is found within 24 hours. And what happens is the person is then kept from getting into the water sources. That way the larva does not, the larva from the blister is not released into the water source. Second is provision of safe drinking water sources. This can be done in a couple different ways. Most commonly it's done through filtering the water, whether through the pipe filters or just filtering your drinking water through nylon mesh or just regular cloth folded over a couple times is enough to filter out the water flea and provide you with a safe drinking water source. It is also possible for wells to be dug. However, given geographical limits as far as the hardness of the earth or groundwater sources, that is also an issue that those wells can't be dug. There's also vector control. It is possible to treat the water with a pesticide called Tempos. However, it is difficult, it's labor intensive, it's hard enough to get the pesticide into the area to the drinking water source, and then also find all of the drinking water sources in the area. Then you have to go through the probability of not being able to correctly identify the amount of pesticide that you need to use to treat that body of water, considering that you do not know the actual volume of the body of water that you're treating. Health education, teaching the people who are inflicted on how to better take care of themselves, but then also to teach them how the life cycle can be stopped. So mainly controlling the blister, keeping the blister from coming into contact with drinking water sources to avoid the larva being distributed back into the drinking water. And then also, as far as health education, there's a incentive system, so a reward program of 10 to 100 US$ for individuals who voluntarily come to these organizations and to get treatment. And then the 5th is certification of eradication. This is endorsed by the World Health Organization, and there are 3 statuses, which I'll touch on in just a minute. So eradication is important because it is a painful disease, without a doubt. And then also loss of attendance in schools. So we want to promote education and moving forward in the country. But then also decrease revenue from agricultural productivity. It's estimated that one man with 1 case of guinea worm disease misses up to 100 days of work. In 1987, in Nigeria, there was an estimated loss of $20 million per crop. So not only is this a painful disease, but it also affects the country economically as well. So what qualifies as eradicated status? There's 3 groups of statuses that are endorsed by the World Health Organization. And there's endemic, where there are cases involved. Pre-certification, which means that they have to hold this status for 3 years of having no cases whatsoever. And then 3 years plus without a case means they're certified as being eradicated. The country status also depends on the statuses of the countries that surround it. Given the areas that are most involved right now, which is Southern Sudan, Chad, and Mali, and Ethiopia. These countries have been inflicted with civil wars for a number of years, which causes dispersal of people, unfortunately. So a country might be in pre-certification status and in year 2, but given the unrest in the country next to it, these people might travel to get away from the fighting and unknowingly take the disease with them. So where do we stand now? In 1986, there was an estimated 3.5 million cases. In 1989, the number dwindled to 883,000 cases that were identified by the World Health Organization in 15 countries. The number keeps dwindling, and in 1995, there was 152,000 cases, and that was supposedly the year that we were set to eradicate that goal. Currently, in 2012, there was 542 cases, and these were reported in Southern Sudan, Chad, Mali, and Ethiopia. Southern Sudan had about 90% of the cases, and this is due to basically civil wars. In 1995, President Carter issued a ceasefire that they got everyone to agree with and made it possible for these health organization workers to enter the country and start the education process. And then in 2005, a comprehensive peace agreement was signed, which also furthers the goal of eradication, especially in these war-torn countries. But still, we go back to, in 2011, 80% of the reported cases did not have a source of improved drinking water. So this goes back to being unable to find the drinking source, being unable to treat it, or being unable to dig a well. So, as we can see, eradication is becoming quite close as we went from 3.5 million cases to 542. However, guinea worm disease is still out there, unfortunately, but the goal of being eradicated without a drug or a vaccine is becoming very real. And at the very end, I have my sources, figures from the CDC, as well as the paper citations. Thank you very much.